The raiders thought her baby would never survive, but the Navajo mother proved them all wrong. The sun rose slowly over the wide desert valley, painting the sand and stone with soft gold light. A gentle wind moved through the dry grass and carried the quiet sound of morning birds. In a small home made from earth, wood, and care, a young Navajo mother woke before the day fully began. She moved softly so she would not disturb the tiny life resting in her arms. Baby was small and light, wrapped in a warm cloth the mother had stitched herself. The child's breathing was slow and gentle, like the calm rise and fall of the land around them. The mother watched every breath with careful eyes. She had learned to read even the smallest movement, the tiniest sound. Each soft sigh from the baby felt like a gift. Her home was simple but clean. A small fire pit sat near the center, its ashes still warm from the night before. Clay bowls lined a wooden shelf, and a woven blanket hung near the doorway to block the morning chill. Everything in the space told a story of hands that worked hard and a heart that never gave up. She stepped outside with the baby held close to her chest. The morning air was cool, and she pulled the cloth tighter around the child. The valley stretched far and wide, with tall red rocks standing like quiet guards in the distance. The land was beautiful, but it was not always kind. The sun could burn, the wind could bite, and the nights could grow cold. The mother walked to a small patch of plants she cared for near her home. The soil was dry, but she had learned how to make it give life. She knelt down slowly, careful not to shake the baby. With one hand she checked the leaves for signs of growth. With the other, she supported the tiny body resting against her. She whispered soft words to the child, not meant for anyone else to hear. Her voice was low and gentle, like a song without music. "Wait!" She told the baby about the sky, the land, and the stories her elders had shared when she was young. She spoke of strength, patience, and the way life always finds a path forward, even in the hardest places. The baby made a small sound, barely louder than the wind. The mother smiled and touched the child's cheek with her finger. The skin was warm. That warmth meant hope. She held on to that feeling as she stood and looked out over the valley. Life had not always been this quiet. There were days filled with voices, laughter, and shared meals, but now it was just her and the baby. Some people had passed through before, and they did not always look at her child with kind eyes. They would whisper to each other, shake their heads, and move on. Their looks stayed with her long after they left. She never spoke back to them. She did not need to. Her strength was not in her words, but in her actions.
Every day she showed her care through small, steady choices. She gathered clean water from a hidden spring.
She found soft herbs her elders once taught her to use. She kept the baby close, always. Later in the morning, the sun climbed higher, and the air began to warm. The mother returned inside and placed the baby on a soft blanket near the fire pit. She added a few small sticks to the embers to bring back a gentle heat. The room filled with a quiet crackle and a faint, earthy smell. She prepared a simple meal for herself, knowing she needed strength to care for her child. As she ate, her eyes never left the baby. The tiny chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. The child's fingers moved slightly, curling and uncurling, as if reaching for something unseen. The mother remembered her own childhood. She remembered running across the land with bare feet, feeling the ground under her skin. She remembered her mother's voice, strong and calm, telling her stories of those who came before. Those memories gave her courage now. When the baby stirred, she lifted the child gently and held the small face close to her own. She felt the soft breath on her cheek. She closed her eyes for a moment and let the feeling sink into her heart. In that quiet space, she found peace. As the day moved forward, the wind picked up, dust swirled across the valley, and the sky grew pale and bright. The mother stayed inside, shielding the baby from the dry air. She sang softly. A simple tune passed down through her family. The song did not have many words, but it carried warmth and care. The baby listened, eyes half open, as if trying to understand the sound. The mother took this as a good sign. Every small reaction felt like a step forward. In the afternoon, shadows stretched long across the ground. The mother stepped outside again, keeping the baby wrapped in close. Pie. She looked toward the horizon. The land was quiet, but she had learned to stay aware. The world could change in a moment. She walked slowly along a narrow path near her home, her feet steady and light. The baby's head rested against her shoulder. She felt the child's heartbeat, soft but strong. That steady beat gave her comfort. As she walked, she spoke again, telling the baby about the stars that would come out at night. She described how they filled the sky like tiny fires, guiding travelers and watching over the land. She promised the baby that one day they would sit outside together and look up at them. The baby made another small sound, a little louder than before. The mother laughed quietly, a sound full of relief and joy. Rouse. She felt a tear roll down her cheek, but she wiped it away and smiled. When evening came, the air cooled. Breath. The sky turned shades of pink and deep orange. The mother returned home and prepared the space for the night. She laid down extra blankets and checked the fire one last time. She sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, with the baby in her arms. Breath. Outside, the valley grew still. The wind softened, and the birds went silent. The world seemed to pause. In that quiet moment, the mother thought about the future. She did not know what it would bring. She only knew what she could do now. See, she could love. She could protect. Bro. She could hope. The baby fell into a gentle sleep. Breath. The mother watched the tiny face, peaceful and calm. She placed a soft kiss on the child's forehead. The night sky filled with stars, just as she had promised. Their light slipped through the doorway and touched the floor like silver threads. The mother looked up and felt a deep sense of calm. No matter what others believed, no matter what doubts passed through the valley, she knew one truth in her heart. This child was here for a reason. This child was strong in ways that could not be seen yet. She held the baby close and stayed awake a little longer, listening to the quiet sounds of the night, the soft crackle of the fire, the gentle breathing in her arms, the distant call of an animal far away. In this small home, in this wide and waiting world, a mother and her child rested together. The story of their strength had only just begun. The morning came with a different kind of air. It felt heavier, as if the valley itself was holding its breath. The mother woke before the sun, her eyes opening to the soft gray light that filled her small home. The baby was still in her arms, warm and quiet, breathing in slow, steady waves. She listened closely, counting each gentle rise and fall, finding comfort in the rhythm. She stood and stretched her tired legs. The night had been long, but her heart felt strong. She wrapped the baby tighter in the cloth and stepped outside. The sky was pale blue, and the sun had not yet climbed over the distant rocks. The land looked wide and empty, but she knew it was never truly still. As she walked toward the spring to gather water, she noticed something new. Footprints marked the soft sand near the edge of the path. They were not hers. Breath. They were deeper, heavier, and led toward the valley. Her steps slowed, but she did not turn back. She held the baby closer and kept moving. At the spring, the water was clear and cool. He filled her small container and glanced around. The wind carried faint sounds, not of birds or leaves, but of distant movement. She could not see anyone yet, but she felt that she was no longer alone in the valley. When she returned to her home, she placed the water inside and sat down near the doorway. The baby stirred and opened its eyes. The mother smiled softly and brushed her finger across the child's tiny hand. The baby wrapped its fingers around hers, a weak but sure grip. That small touch gave her courage. Later in the morning, the sun rose higher and the valley grew brighter. That was when she saw them. A small group of people appeared on the far side of the open land, walking slowly toward her home. Their shapes stood out against the light sand and stone. She did not run. She did not hide. She stood in the doorway with the baby in her arms and waited. The group came closer. They were strangers, their faces tired and serious. Their clothes were worn from travel and their eyes moved over the land, searching and judging. When they saw the mother and the baby, they stopped. For a moment, no one spoke. The wind passed between them, lifting dust from the ground. One of them stepped forward. He looked at the baby and then at the mother. His face showed doubt, not kindness. He said something low and quiet to the others. They nodded, their eyes still on the small child in her arms. But the mother did not understand all their words, but she understood their tone. It was not warm. It was not gentle. She felt a tightness in her chest, but she kept her face calm. She held the baby higher, shielding the tiny body from their stares. The baby made a soft sound, a small cry that cut through the silence. The mother rocked gently, whispering comfort. She did not look away from the strangers. One of them shook his head slowly. Another turned to look at the sky, as if measuring time and chances. Their faces showed little hope. The mother stepped forward. Just one small step. She did not speak. Beishi did not need to. Her eyes were steady, and her arms were strong around her child. The group stood there for a while, saying little to each other. The valley felt tense, like a rope pulled too tight. The wind stopped, and even the birds were quiet. At last the strangers turned and walked past her home, moving deeper into the valley. They did not offer help. They did not offer harm. They simply left behind a heavy feeling, like a shadow that stayed even after they were gone.
The mother watched them until they were small shapes in the distance.
Only then did she let out the breath she had been holding. She went back inside and sat down on the floor, her back against the wall. The baby was quiet again, resting against her chest. She closed her eyes for a moment and pressed her forehead gently to the child's head. She remembered the looks on their faces, the doubt, the quiet judgment. It was not the first time she had seen it. Bergs, others before had looked at her baby the same way, as if measuring something they could not understand. She stood up and began her work for the day. She cleaned the small space, sweeping dust from the floor. She checked her supplies, counting what little food and herbs she had left. She planned carefully, as she always did. Outside, the sun climbed high. The heat grew strong, and the air shimmered over the sand. The mother stayed inside as much as she could, keeping the baby in the shade. In the afternoon, the baby began to fuss. The small face twisted, and a weak cry filled the room. The mother moved quickly. holding and rocking, checking the child's warmth, whispering soft words. She walked back and forth, her steps slow and steady. She sang the same simple tune she always did. Her voice did not shake, but shocks. Her arms did not tire. After a while, the baby's cries softened. The tiny body relaxed, and the eyes closed again. The mother felt relief wash over her like cool water. Bye. She sat down near the doorway, letting a soft breeze touch her face. She looked out at the valley. Inspiration. The land was wide and open, and the path the strangers had taken was still visible in the sand. She thought about them as they traveled. She wondered what they would say about her and her baby. She wondered if they would remember her at all. As the day moved toward evening, clouds gathered in the distance. The sky darkened slightly, and the air grew cooler. The mother welcomed the change. The heat had been hard on the baby. A light rain began to fall. Just a few drops at first, then more. The mother stepped outside and lifted her face to the sky. The water felt good on her skin. She laughed softly, a sound full of relief. Despait. She held the baby under the doorway, letting the fresh, cool air reach the child without letting the rain touch the small face. The baby opened its eyes and looked around. Curious, the mother smiled. She showed the baby the rain, the clouds, the way the land drank in the water. They spoke softly, telling the child that the world could be kind even when it was hard. When the rain stopped, the valley smelled fresh and clean. The sky cleared and the sun dipped low, painting everything in warm light. The mother prepared for the night. She added wood to the fire and laid out blankets. She fed herself and made sure the baby was comfortable. She sat quietly, thinking about the day. The strangers. The looks. The doubts. She felt a small ache in her heart, but it did not turn into anger. It turned into something stronger. She looked down at the baby, now sleeping peacefully. The tiny chest rose and fell. The small hands rested against her arm. She leaned back and closed her eyes, listening to the quiet sounds of the evening, the soft crackle of the fire, the distant call of an animal, the gentle wind brushing against the walls. The valley felt calm again, but she knew it would not always be this way. More people would come. More eyes would look at her child with questions and doubt. She opened her eyes and gazed at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. They shone softly, steady, and patient. In her heart, she made a quiet promise. No matter who came, no matter what they believed, Prabha, she would stand the same way she had today. Calm, strong, steady. Pray. She held the baby closer and rocked gently. The child slept on, safe in her arms. The night wrapped around the small home like a blanket. The valley rested. The next day began with a soft glow in the sky, as if the valley was waking up slowly and carefully. The mother opened her eyes to the quiet sound of the baby's breathing. The small home was still, and the air felt fresh from the rain that had fallen the night before. The ground outside smelled clean, and the wind carried a gentle coolness. She sat up and stretched her arms, careful not to disturb the child resting against her. The baby made a small sound, a soft hum that felt almost like a tiny voice trying to speak. The mother smiled and whispered back, as if the two of them were sharing a secret only they could understand. She wrapped the baby in a fresh cloth and stepped outside. The valley looked different now. The sand was darker, and small drops of water still rested on the leaves of the plants near her home. Right. The sky was wide and bright, and a few clouds drifted slowly, like quiet travelers. She walked to her small garden patch and knelt down. The plants seemed stronger after the rain, their leaves standing taller. She touched the soil and felt the coolness under her fingers. It gave her a sense of hope, the same kind she felt when she looked at her child. The baby's eyes were open now, looking around with a soft, curious gaze. The mother lifted the child slightly and turned in a slow circle, showing the baby the valley. She pointed to the tall rocks in the distance, the open sky above, and the small birds hopping across the ground. Her voice stayed low and calm, like a steady stream. Later in the morning, she noticed something new in the baby's movements. The tiny hands reached out more often, opening and closing with a little more strength than before. The mother watched closely, her heart beating a little faster. Every small change felt important. She carried the baby back inside and prepared a simple meal for herself. As she ate, she kept glancing at the child who lay on a soft blanket near the fire pit. The baby kicked gently, feet moving in slow, uneven motions. The mother laughed quietly, a sound full of surprise and joy. She remembered the strangers from the day before, Narration. Their faces, their doubt, the way they had looked at her baby. The memory still felt heavy, but now it mixed with something new. A small spark of confidence. The baby was showing signs of life and strength, even if only in tiny ways. As the day went on, the sun rose higher, and a warmth filled the valley. The mother stayed near the doorway, letting light reach the baby without letting the heat become too strong. She used a woven cloth to create a soft shade, making a cool space for the child to rest. She sang again, the same simple tune, her voice steady and warm. The baby listened, eyes half closed, fingers curling and uncurling in time with the sound. The mother felt a deep connection in those moments, like the world had narrowed down to just the two of them and the gentle rhythm they shared. In the afternoon, she decided to walk a little farther from her home than usual. She needed more herbs and fresh water. She tied the baby securely against her chest and stepped onto the narrow path that led through the valley. The land was quiet. The wind moved through the tall grass, making a soft, whispering sound. The mother walked slowly, watching every step. She did not rush. She did not rush. She had learned that the land rewarded patience. At the spring, she filled her container and sat down on a nearby rock. Break. She let the baby rest against her shoulder and looked out at the open space around her. The sky felt endless, and the earth beneath her felt solid and steady. She spoke softly to the baby, telling stories of the past. She talked about her own mother, about how she had taught her to listen to the wind and watch the stars. She spoke of long walks under the moon and warm fires on cold nights. Her words painted pictures the baby could not yet understand, but her tone carried comfort and care. On the way back, she noticed new footprints in the sand, different from the ones she had seen before. They were smaller, lighter. She paused for a moment, her heart beating faster. She looked around, but the valley remained empty. Bye. She decided not to worry. She kept walking, her steps steady, her arms strong around the baby. When she reached home, she found a small bundle placed near the doorway. It was wrapped in a simple cloth. She approached slowly and knelt down. Inside were a few pieces of dried food and a small container of clean water. He glances around, but no one was there. The mother felt a mix of feelings, precise, caution, breath, and a small sense of gratitude. She did not know who had left the bundle or why, but she accepted it as a quiet sign that not all who passed through the valley carried doubt in their hearts. She brought the bundle inside and placed it on the shelf. The baby stirred, and she lifted the child gently, rocking back and forth. As the afternoon turned into evening, the sky changed colors, but spread across the horizon. The mother stepped outside and sat on the ground holding the baby close. She noticed something new again. The baby's eyes were brighter, more focused. The child followed the movement of the clouds, even if only for a moment. The mother felt a rush of emotion rise in her chest. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly.
She remembered all the quiet moments of worry.
The long nights, the looks of doubt. The fear that had tried to settle into her heart. Now, those feelings felt lighter, like they were being carried away by the wind. As darkness fell, she returned inside and prepared for the night. She added wood to the fire and laid out fresh blankets. The baby rested against her, warm and calm. She sat quietly, listening to the soft crackle of the fire. The baby made small sounds, not quite cries, not quite laughter. The mother answered with gentle words and soft hums. Brash. She thought about the path ahead. She knew there would be more challenges. The land could be harsh. People could be unkind.
But she also knew something else now. The baby was growing.
Slowly, quietly, but surely. She held the child up slightly and looked into the small face. The baby's eyes met hers for a brief moment, clear and steady. It felt like a connection deeper than words. The mother smiled, her eyes filling with tears. She did not try to hide. She pressed her forehead gently to the baby's head and stayed there for a moment, breathing in the warmth and life she felt in her arms. Outside, the stars appeared one by one. The sky became a wide blanket of light and darkness. The valley rested under their watch. The mother lay down on her blanket with the baby beside her, one hand resting lightly on the small chest. She felt the steady rise and fall, stronger than before. Psst. In the quiet of the night, she whispered a promise. She would keep walking this path. She would keep standing tall. She would keep believing no matter who came or what they thought. The baby fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. The mother stayed awake a little longer, watching the stars through the doorway. The valley was silent, but her heart was full. The morning light entered the small home in a soft and gentle way, touching the walls and the woven blankets on the floor. The mother opened her eyes and felt the baby move slightly beside her. The tiny body stretched, arms and legs pushing outward before settling again. That small movement filled her heart with a quiet kind of joy. She sat up slowly and lifted the baby into her arms. The child's eyes were open, wide and calm, looking around the room as if taking in every shadow and every line of light. The mother smiled and brushed her thumb across the baby's cheek. The skin felt warm and alive. She stood and stepped outside. The air was cool, and the sky was painted in soft shades of blue and pale gold. The valley felt peaceful, but she knew peace never lasted forever. Still, she allowed herself to enjoy the moment. She walked to the spring, her steps slow and steady. The baby rested against her chest, wrapped in a clean cloth. As she filled her container with water, she noticed how clear the reflection of the sky looked on the surface. But she paused and watched it ripple as the water poured in. It reminded her of how life could change in small ways, one moment at a time. On the way back, she saw movement in the distance. A small group of people stood near a cluster of rocks, talking among themselves. She felt her heart tighten, but she did not stop. She kept walking, her head high and her arms firm around the baby. As she came closer, the group turned to look at her. Their faces showed curiosity and surprise. Some of them were the same strangers who had passed through the valley days before. Others were new. They whispered to each other, pointing toward the baby. The mother could feel their eyes on her, measuring, wondering. She felt the familiar weight of their doubt, but she did not let it slow her. She walked past them without speaking. Her steps were calm and even. The baby made a soft sound, a quiet coo that seemed to float in the air between them. The group fell silent. One of them spoke, not in a harsh way, but not kindly either. He asked about the child, about how the baby was doing. His voice held more surprise than concern. The mother stopped and turned to face them. She did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She simply looked down at the baby and then back at the group. Her eyes were steady. The baby moved again, lifting one small hand into the air. The fingers opened and closed, slow but sure. The mother felt a deep warmth in her chest. The group watched. Their faces changed. Just a little. The doubt in their eyes softened into something else. Not belief yet, but curiosity. The mother nodded once, a simple gesture, and continued on her way. She did not wait for their response. Back at her home, she placed the water on the shelf and set the baby down on a blanket near the doorway. The sunlight reached the small face, and the baby squinted and turned its head away. The mother laughed quietly and moved the blanket into the shade. She prepared her meal and ate slowly, watching the baby the whole time. The child kicked gently, making small, uneven movements that seemed stronger than before. Each little motion felt like a quiet victory. In the afternoon, the wind picked up. The sky filled with moving clouds, and shadows danced across the valley floor. The mother stayed close to home, gathering herbs and checking her small garden patch. She knelt down and noticed how much the plants had grown since the rain. The leaves were greener, the stems taller. She touched them lightly, feeling the life in them. She thought about how the land and her baby seemed to be changing together, both finding strength in the same way. The baby grew restless and let out a small cry. The mother lifted the child and rocked gently, humming her simple tune. Brace. The sound of her voice mixed with the wind, creating a soft and steady rhythm. She walked back and forth inside the home, her steps slow and careful. The baby's cries faded into quiet sounds, and then into calm breathing. The mother felt relief wash over her again. As the day moved toward evening, she decided to sit outside. She laid a blanket on the ground and settled down with the baby in her arms. The sky began to glow with warm colors, and the valley felt wide and open. She saw the group of people again in the distance. They stood on a ridge, looking toward her home. This time they did not come closer. They simply watched. The baby made a soft sound, and the mother smiled. She held the child up slightly, letting the fading sunlight touch the small face. The baby's eyes followed the light, focused and clear. She felt something shift inside her. The worry that had once filled her days felt smaller now. It was still there, but it no longer ruled her heart. As the sun dipped lower, one person from the group began to walk toward her. The mother stood slowly, keeping the baby close. The stranger stopped a few steps away. He looked at the baby and then at the mother. His face showed something new. Respect. He spoke quietly, asking how she had kept the child safe and growing. His tone was no longer cold or doubtful. It was curious, almost gentle. The mother answered in simple words. She spoke of patience, of watching, of listening to the land and to her own heart. She did not speak of strength as something loud or bold. She spoke of it as something quiet and steady. The stranger nodded. He looked back at the group and then at the baby again. He did not say much more, but his eyes told a different story than before. He turned and walked away, joining the others on the ridge. The group slowly moved on, their figures growing smaller against the wide sky. The mother watched them go. She did not feel proud. She did not feel angry. She felt calm. She returned to her blanket and sat down. The baby rested against her, warm and peaceful. Night came slowly. The sky filled with stars bright and steady. The mother looked up and felt the same sense of calm she always did when the stars appeared. They reminded her that the world was large, but there was still a place for her and her child in it. She prepared for the night, adding wood to the fire and laying out fresh blankets. The baby fell asleep in her arms, breathing deep and slow. She sat quietly listening to the soft sounds of the valley at night. The wind, the fire, the distant calls of animals far away. She thought about how the strangers had looked at her now.
How their doubt had started to change. She knew not everyone would understand, and not everyone would believe.
But she also knew she did not need them to. She looked down at the baby's face, peaceful and calm. The small chest rose and fell with a steady rhythm, stronger than it had been before. She placed a gentle kiss on the child's forehead and whispered soft words of comfort and promise. The night wrapped around the small home, quiet and steady. The mother leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. She felt tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that came from a day lived with care and purpose. In her heart, she felt something firm and clear. The path ahead was still long. The land would still be hard. People would still doubt. But now there was proof in her arms. Proof that quiet strength could grow. Proof that patience could turn into life. The final morning came with a sky that looked wider and brighter than ever before. The light touched the valley in a soft, gentle way, as if the land itself was offering a new beginning. The mother woke to the sound of the baby's breathing, steady and strong. It was deeper now, fuller, no longer fragile like it once had been. She sat up and held the baby close, feeling the warmth of the small body against her chest. The child moved, stretching arms and legs with slow but sure motions. The mother smiled, a smile that came from deep inside her heart. Fresh. She stepped outside, letting the cool air brush against her face. The valley felt calm and open, and the wind carried the scent of fresh earth and plants. She looked toward the distant rocks and the long path that stretched beyond them. It felt like the world had opened just a little wider. She walked to the spring, her steps light, her arms strong. The baby looked around with clear eyes, watching the movement of the sky and the passing clouds. The mother spoke softly, telling the child about the day, about the land, about the quiet strength that lived in both of them. When she returned home, she placed the baby on a blanket in the doorway where the sunlight could reach without becoming too warm. The child kicked gently, feet moving with more purpose now. The mother laughed softly and clapped her hands once, slow and calm. The baby watched, eyes wide, and made a small sound that felt almost like a reply. She prepared her simple meal and ate while sitting near the child. Her eyes never left the baby for long. Every small movement felt like a gift, something she had waited and hoped for through long days and quiet nights. Later in the morning, she noticed people approaching again from the far side of the valley. This time, it was not just a small group. There were more of them, moving slowly, talking among themselves. The mother felt her heart beat a little faster, but she did not feel fear the way she once had. She lifted the baby into her arms and stepped outside. She stood in the open, calm and steady, just as she always had. The group stopped a short distance away. Their faces showed curiosity, and some of them looked at each other as if sharing quiet thoughts. The baby made a soft, clear sound, louder than before. It carried across the space between them. One of the people stepped forward. It was the same stranger who had spoken to her the evening before. He looked at the baby and then at the mother. His face no longer held doubt. It held something closer to respect. He spoke quietly, telling the others what he had seen the day before. He pointed gently toward the baby, explaining how the child had grown stronger, how the mother had cared with patience and calm. The group listened. Some nodded, but some leaned closer to see the baby for themselves. The mother did not step back. She held the child higher, letting them see the small face, the clear eyes, the steady breathing. The baby reached out with one hand, fingers opening and closing in the air. A soft sound of surprise moved through the group. One of them smiled, not wide or loud, but real. The mother felt a deep sense of peace. She did not feel like she had proven anything. She felt like she had simply shown the truth that had always been there. The group did not stay long. They spoke among themselves in quiet voices, then slowly turned and continued on their path.
But this time, they did not leave behind a shadow of doubt.
They left behind a feeling of understanding. The mother watched them go, the baby resting against her shoulder. She felt light, as if something heavy had finally lifted from her heart. The rest of the day passed in a gentle way. She tended to her plants, noticing how much they had grown. She gathered herbs and fresh water, moving with an easy rhythm that matched the calm of the land. The baby stayed awake longer than usual, watching her movements. The child followed her with bright eyes, turning its head to keep her in view. The mother smiled each time she noticed. In the afternoon, she sat on the ground outside and laid the baby on a soft blanket. She held a small woven toy she had made from dried grass and gentle fibers. She moved it slowly in front of the baby's face. The baby reached out, fingers brushing the toy. The mother felt a rush of joy so strong it brought tears to her eyes. She laughed quietly, her voice breaking just a little. She wiped her face and kept smiling, letting the moment settle into her heart. As the sun moved lower in the sky, the valley filled with warm light. The rocks glowed in shades of gold and red, and the wind softened into a gentle breeze. The mother picked up the baby and walked along the edge of the valley not far from home. She wanted to show the child more of the world, even if only in small steps. Bursts. She spoke softly as she walked, pointing out the plants, the stones, the birds that flew overhead. Her voice was calm and full of warmth. The baby listened, eyes wide and focused, as if trying to take in every sound and movement. When evening came, she returned home and prepared for the night. She added wood to the fire and laid out fresh blankets. The baby rested against her, tired, but peaceful, bare. She sat in the doorway and watched the sky change. The colors faded into deep blue, and the first stars began to appear. She thought about the long journey they had taken together, the quiet mornings, the heavy looks of doubt, the nights filled with worry and hope. Despite a Bobby so that baby had once felt in her arms, now the child felt different. For still small, still young, but strong in a way that could be felt, not just seen. The stars filled the sky, one by one, until the valley was wrapped in their soft light. The mother lay down on her blanket, placing the baby beside her. She rested one hand gently on the small chest, feeling the steady rise and fall. She whispered soft words, not meant for anyone else. Words of thanks, breath, words of promise. She promised to keep walking this path, to keep listening to the land, to keep trusting her heart. The baby made a quiet sound in sleep, a gentle breath that felt like a peaceful answer. The night was calm. The wind moved through the grass. The fire crackled softly. In this small home, in this wide and waiting world, a mother and her child rested together. The journey that had begun with doubt and quiet fear had led them here to a place of calm and gentle strength. The mother closed her eyes, her heart full. She knew the world would still bring challenges. The land would still be hard. People would still question and wonder. But she also knew something deeper now. Strength did not always shout.